Okay, well, hello and good morning, everyone. I have to say, what an amazing opening session that was. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. I thought it was very inspiring words from Leona about leading during a challenging time, and some really great information from Tessa about CCGI's data infrastructure and the integration with the statewide system. My name's Jake Poore. I'm the Director of Communication at Growing Inland Achievement. And prior to that, I worked for several years as in staff and adjunct faculty roles at Cal State San Bernardino and UC Riverside. And I'm absolutely thrilled to help facilitate this fireside chat today. I'm anticipating an amazing conversation with two of my personal favorite GIA board members, who I'll introduce in just a moment. And I'm confident we will leave inspired to think regionally and work collectively to improve educational and economic outcomes here in the Inland Empire. So just a friendly reminder to mute your audio at this time. We're going to have about a 30-minute discussion, and then we'll do our best to leave some time at the end for some question and answer. Right now, I'd like to introduce two of Growing Inland Achievement's governing board members who are with us this morning. Ms. Sheila Thornton is the president and CEO of OneFuture Coachella Valley, a nonprofit organization that expands regional efforts to align educational attainment with economic development. And Sheila is a founding board member of Growing Inland Achievement and has played a pivotal role in crafting the vision and the mission of the organization. Welcome, Sheila. And also with us is Dr. Kim Wilcox, who is the 9th Chancellor of the University of California Riverside, which he has been leading since 2013. And during his time at UCR, Kim has spurred a new era of growth, embarking on the expansion of the faculty and the development of new facilities for research, teaching, and public service. And like Ms. Thornton, Chancellor Wilcox has been a part of GIA's governing board since the organization was founded in 2015. So thank you both for being here with us today. What I'd like to ask of both of you to kick things off is, how does your organization work to support student success from cradle to career? And Chancellor Wilcox, let's start with you.
Sure. Thanks. First, thanks for the introductions, Jake. Thanks for the time. Thanks for coming. When you start talking about us as founding board members, I'm looking at the screen. Sheila looks like she did 13 years ago, and I look, or 5 years ago rather, I look nothing like it. So, but anyway, good to be here. There's 1,000 things we could talk about. Let me pick out an example that I think touches on a few key elements in the cradle to grave piece. UCR is proud to be also a founding member of not just the Growing Inland Achievement Alliance, but also the University Innovation Alliance, which is a national group of, has been 11. We just added 2 more, 13 universities across the country that are similarly dedicated in improving graduation rates, particularly from underrepresented groups and low-income groups. And as part of that broader national effort, we created a national effort called Bridging the Gap from Education to Employment, BG, with support from some foundations. The 11 schools put their heads together to think about kind of the underlying dynamics of moving from universities to the career world, and design thinking and mapping of student motivations and practicalities. Here at UCR, as part of that experiment, pilot effort, we partnered with the EPA, US EPA, created a kind of a scaffolded internship program where the students actually had EPA mentors and faculty mentors, some clarity about both skills development and career development goals. And we saw it both as certainly in this case, a great assistance to our students and those headed toward the EPA, but more importantly, this national network of trying to extract the kinds of principles and behaviors that are going to be meaningful for lots of students. And that's one example on the graduation side, but there's many more, of course, on the pipeline coming in. I'll turn it over to Sheila.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. Sheila?
Great. And yes, thanks, Jake, for today. This is a great opportunity. And I am, Kim, I guess what I'd say about you is what you still have after the 6 years is your sense of humor. You keep us laughing. So you got that going for you.
I got something.
So OneFuture Coachella Valley, the folks that are on this, I'm seeing a number of you who have probably heard this before, but I will just, for those who have not, our institution supporting student success from cradle to career, I like to say we're an organization that is sort of not quite cradle. We really started from the perspective of middle school into high school and then college readiness, college completion, and job attainment as a driver of economic mobility. So OneFuture specifically represents the backbone that connects the dots between our K-12 school districts, our community colleges, college partners, and universities and colleges that our students go to across the nation, and nonprofits and employers. So we are sort of the definition of cradle to career, but let's call it from just about fifth grade on. We now, because of the work that we've done across the last 15 years, have begun discussions about how we really integrate that earlier work. And we do work with the County Office of Ed on that, and a number of other nonprofits that are interested in sort of working that into our regional effort. But how do we do it? We do it through what's called the Regional Plan for College and Career Success. We actually developed in 2012 what we call kind of a master plan for the Coachella Valley. It's the umbrella under which all of us work that lay out specific strategies that are going to expand opportunities for students who are from low income, underrepresented populations to be able to get into college and to align that with some level of career or interest themes. And so our work has been, while it was aimed at this concept of economic development, the concept really relies on a whole cross-section of partners that are working under this master plan that lays out those big macro common goals. The most recent of which is we set a 70% 6-year completion goal for graduating seniors, which is a tough one, but the group has been together long enough that they just say, you know what, if we don't do it, who's gonna do that? So
I love it. I love the ambitious goal, and you're right. If we don't, who does? And I heard some words that as a collective impact organization, I love backbone organization, alliances, partnerships. These are all things that are critical to our work. So when we're looking at carrying out collective impact work, intersegmental partnerships are a critical part of that. Can you share with us why that is, and perhaps explain how intersegmental partnerships really help to support student success from that cradle to career journey? Sheila, why don't you start?
Sure, yeah. All these terms, when we started in 2005, collective impact wasn't a term, and then in 2010, the Stanford study came out. So I always say, I was country when country wasn't cool, There was collective impact.
You say that, does anyone else?
There's a singer. I think we all do a form of collective impact-ish. It's a mapping of the way that we think in the collective, and in a way that is not just about individual institutions or individual sectors. And it's long-term and complex, and it's incredibly, I think it's challenging in terms of holding the relationships together based on various political and funding and legislative mandates that come down on a regular basis. But the importance of intersegmental is this. Who else would care what happens to the 5,000 seniors that graduate from the 13 high schools in the Coachella Valley collectively, if it weren't for a group of folks who were thinking about both what's in their own self-interest, so employers, higher education institutions who are going to receive those students, K-12 districts who are putting out that they are graduating those students, families, nonprofits even who are trying to solve the social issues associated with students not getting the right kind of education or having access to the right resources or the ability to move out of poverty. And so why intersegmental? And I just add cross-sector. Why is it so important? Because the reality is there's a return on investment for all of us. This is literally the way that we create the future. And so for us to think about it in that construct where there's a significant gap in either one segment of education or a family situation or city, or just in terms of poverty in a particular zip code, that's where a group that are thinking across segments and across sectors can really fill gaps more effectively than if they're just serving their own specific student population or doing their own program services from a nonprofit perspective.
Great points, Sheila. And I appreciate you channeling your inner Barbara Mandrell.
Is that who it was?
It wasn't cool, yes. Kim, the same thing, same question for you.
Yeah, kind of deep disclosure. Years ago, when I was on the faculty at the University of Kansas, my background's in communication disorders. We created what we call the Kansas Early Childhood Research Institute with Department of Education funding to help children, preschoolers in particular, in their life journey. And we chose to focus primarily, almost exclusively, on transitions. And if you think for a minute about transitions in your life, that first day of kindergarten, when you had your snack and you had your sleeping mat, you had to take a nap. But that was part of the rules. Then your first day of kindergarten, or first day of first grade, now it's serious because you got pencils, scissors, and paste. You're actually going to do something. The stakes just went up. And you're kind of good, 2, 3, 4, the second grade, third grade, that's all good till you get to, I'm going to junior high, anxiety jumps. Get done with now you're going to freshman year. Each of those, first day of college, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can look stupid do I have the right clothes? I mean, all the things that happen at each of these transitions. Once you get into the role and kind of understand it, you can kind of move through it. And so when you ask a question about intersegmental, it's the interpiece from a kind of a person, the individual student, their family, all the questions that mom has before the first day of kindergarten, before they send them off to go with. We're starting to move into the residence halls here, and there's moms weepy out there leaving their student, who's an adult by most of the world standards, in a safe environment. But it's the transition piece. So to Sheila's point, if we don't focus on this and help, then we're missing the boat. And we have to help make the transitions as understandable and smooth and effective as possible, because I trust that once they get into Cal State San Bernardino, they're going to be fine because there's all kinds of systems there. But getting into Cal State San Bernardino, that's a bigger jump for the student and their family. So it became, I think, back to our first couple meetings, we were all about college attainment. That was the goal. And in the first meeting, we're starting to talk about third grade as part of college attainment. That's been kind of the ethos of the GIA from the beginning.
I appreciate those comments, and I agree. Those transition points are absolutely critical. And Sheila, you're right. There's a return on this investment for the entire region. Earlier this morning, Carlos Ayala, our GIA CEO, described the collective impact approach and the importance of regional collaboration. Can you please tell us, how do you personally model a collaborative leadership style in your own work? And Kim, I'll start with you.
Oh, whoa, personal question, Jake. There's two domains to it. One is the institutional domain. And I think that in the time that I've been at Riverside, we've made that an institutional priority. The GIA, the UIA, the Riverside Educational Cooperative. We can go down a long list of just started we're part of a group starting another national HSI research consortium. So there's kind of the institutional persona that sends that message. And then individually, I spend a lot of time thinking about the groups that I work with. As Chancellor, you walk into the room, everybody waits to hear what the Chancellor says, and that's what we think we're supposed to do. So you have to be cognizant of the fact that give everybody else space. I have a kind of a rule of thumb. Staff meetings only can have 3 agenda items. Anything more than 3 agenda items, it becomes the leader reading their list and giving them reports. I could send that by email. 3 agenda items, we got an hour and a half. People understand we're going to have to talk about this. And that means develop time pretty much everybody has. And so there's ways that you can model the behavior individually is one big domain for me. And then this institutional profile as well. And I think the two go hand in hand. You have to, I had a mentor colleague years ago who reminded me that credit is infinitely divisible. There's always more credit. You can divide it up with more people. And that kind of ethos is, I think it's fundamental to the GIA and what we've gotten done as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And it's right in line with Leona's comments from earlier, giving everyone else space and dividing the power. So I really appreciate those comments. Sheila?
I'd say on the organizational level, model it by executing on what our mission and core function is. We are an aligner. We're the organization that's supposed to be about really surfacing the kind of collaborative leadership that creates something bigger than any one institution can do. And we have a set of principles around that. All the folks who are on from the ants, we walk through the guiding principles and the principles of teamwork and all of that. So there are things that you do just naturally because you learned it as a practice. And then I would say in terms of the nuances behind that, it is a listening ear to the interests and particular perspective of the various sort of partners. So when we came into this work, what I learned really quickly was, there's this age-old argument that education moves slowly and business needs to move fast. And, so I think the first step in all that is to sort of break that down, to get the right people in the room and hear and facilitate in a way so that folks can express that, but then get beyond it to envision something that is in both parties' self-interest. So I think in terms of collaborative leadership, it is really the facilitative mindset, and it is a mindset that is driving folks to something that's outside of any one of us. Just implementing that, that's sort of our role. That's the definition of what we do. Now, I'd say on a personal level, it's a lot easier than it is to do because my brain would like to control all kinds of things. I've got the perfect picture in my head. So that then takes reading, thinking, a little bit more silence, and then some prayer.
I appreciate that, Sheila. You both are very inspiring leaders. I know at your institutions and on the GIA board. And speaking of the board, you've both been on the board for 6 years since the organization was founded. And I know you both have made a commitment to supporting the region through the cross-sector collaboration, intersegmental work like we discussed. What words of advice might you have to offer to motivate others and to empower perhaps your employees and colleagues to think regionally and work collaboratively beyond the boundaries of their organization to achieve regional success? Sheila, how about you start?
You gave us these questions in advance. What came to mind right off the bat was when one of the leads of one of the school districts.
Nobody gave me the questions. What's up? Who
Did he ask for you or you?
Just teasing.
Oh, you didn't get them. Cheat sheet. But what came to mind first was after 9 years of work, sitting at the table with a cross section of school district leaders, college leaders, business folks, and one of the school district folks said, "This is the coolest thing in the world because my grants write themselves now." And what he was saying was, when you do this, you got to slow down to go fast. You got to take the time to do, the ants know this well. We do this tactical planning process. You're setting this common vision, and then you're working backwards from that. And then you have to see yourself in it. So how do you step into seeing yourself in it and not revert back into your old institution, like internal sort of institutional ways? But that comment really struck me that that this particular person's job got easier because they had the formula and they have a process and a toolkit that's in place where they get to understand regional economic development issues. Somebody in a school district may or may not have a touch on that. Who are the key partners associated with delivering on the education side? Why do the employers care about it? And then where are the community-based social solutions that could accelerate it? So I would say it makes people's job easier. The other piece to it is, if we're serious about it, you got to actually build it into job descriptions, because otherwise it just becomes another committee. I'm going to go attend that and become involved in the United Way thing because it puts a presence out there. This is a different animal. This is that you're actually looking at ways that the work that you've done can contribute to and can be accelerated by a broader thinking about what the solution is, right? That it is bigger than just one institution that's been doing it the way, and continuous improvement, but that there's a significant benefit in leading from the middle, in working from the middle and across sectors and segments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Chancellor Wilcox?
And I did get the questions ahead of time. But when I got them, one of the things that struck me was the think regionally. And that's because I've spent a lot of time on our campus talking about the fact that we have to calibrate nationally and act locally. Riverside now, the US News ranking just came out, we're the 33rd ranked public university in America out of how many thousands of them. We're a national university with all that comes with it. And for many universities that are national universities, they're pretty disconnected from their communities. If you can think of Johns Hopkins and all the rest, and they're kind of monoliths unto themselves. We're in that same league, but we work very hard not to be of the same culture, but instead to be of the region. So we have to for us to do what we need to achieve, we have to calibrate nationally. Those are our competitors, but we have to do the work here, whether that's our own research in our own laboratory or it's our community process as well. And part of our success has clearly been the success of our students. And those students primarily come from, I can wave my arms across a map and they're all right nearby. So the health of the region is crucial. I remind people all the time, our last name is Riverside. We're forever going to be tied to the region in the fullest sense. And so that's been in many institutions a difficult line to balance this national, international prominence and local commitment and value. It's surprisingly easy here at Riverside, at UCR rather. I think because of the history that we have and the community support that we've had for so long. And that's why organizations like the GIA are important to us, because they reify it in a way that provides structure, but I hope more importantly, continuity. So someday I will be gone, but the structures that are now in place, I think will help to ensure that kind of regional engagement for the long term.
Thank you, Kim. And Sheila, I know you mentioned job description in your comments, and I know when I worked at CSUSB and UCR, regional collaboration wasn't necessarily something defined as part of my job description. And yet, as we just discussed, it's critical to achieving equitable educational and economic success. So I'm wondering how can you reinforce to your employees and colleagues at your institutions that as their leader, you have their back, so to speak, when it comes to working on regional initiatives that may not be included in their typical institutional job description? Chancellor Wilcox.
Lots of thoughts are in my head. One is that some of the best advice I ever got professionally, I got from my wife years ago. I was once again going to put off taking a vacation, and she said, Kim, if you don't take a vacation, no one else thinks they should take a vacation. Everybody's looking at what you do. I could give you other stories like that, but that's the most concise one. And so one of the most important things is my participation in GIA is something I talk about on the campus. So that means to others, well, he's doing it, must be okay. Maybe that's a good thing. And other kinds of participation like that, people see it and appreciate that it's part of the culture that we are in. I talk about the successes a lot, our institutional successes and regional successes, and of course I talk about these collaborations as the theme there, and that's part of it too. But I think just walking the walk is a big part.
Wonderful. Sheila, how do you reinforce this idea that you have your employees or your colleagues back?
It's their job. It is their job. OneFuture we're basically the GIA. GIA is OneFuture on steroids kind of thing, except for we're about a specific economy, a specific geographic region. So our employees are that every minute of every day basically is sort of spent in various partners environment, and we're running alignment teams. So the ants here, we have 11, 12, I think, alignment teams on a whole variety of things that are important for student success and for workforce development in our region. And that requires that they are there, and they're the facilitators of the process. What I'd say on the flip side to partners, I don't think it's the most natural thing in the world to do, because everybody's got more than enough to do in their job back at home, right? So you do have to, as I said, it's got to be in a job description that the way that you execute on this is that you're connecting it to other resources that can accelerate what your particular accountability is. And then I think there has to be discussions about it. There actually has to be an agenda item that we check in on. What are our FAFSA completion rates, the very straightforward thing, but what do college and career readiness indicators look like, and how is it that the work that you're involved in that regional collaborative either feeding that or not contributing to that? And in our work, we've had to be very transparent and directly connected to superintendents and our local college folks to say, is it working or is it not working? Is there a result here? Is there a place where we could do some gap filling or change up the way that we use these cross-sector teams to be more responsive and support the strategic direction of each of those institutions as well, just so that you can get to the bigger story. But I think it really is about building it in from an accountability perspective. It can be easy to say, go be on that committee, be involved in that committee. The question is, how is it that you're contributing? And then also, what is it that how are you making the collective change happen? Like, does it actually produce the kinds of outcomes that everyone says it's producing?
Love that idea on accountability to collective change. I really appreciate that. And Kim, you mentioned that you talk about successes on campus often. So the last thing I'm really curious, do either of you have any quick examples you might be able to share that illustrate the power of working together across sectors or segments using the collective impact framework and the positive results that delivered for students, for an institution, or for the economy? Sheila, do any stories come to mind?
Yeah, I'd say number one, getting 3 school districts and all of the key higher ed and county and employer partners together on one master plan in 2012 was big. That was just the fact that they agreed that it was valuable. And then when OneFuture was spinning off, to have the leaders of that come to us and say, let's get moving on Regional Plan 2.0. We're actually on the second iteration of it. And so staying at the table for 15 years and seeing the kinds of results we've seen increases in A through G completion, college enrollment. We've aligned, $16 million in scholarships, 3,000 students, all the student population that we are most focused on. The school districts in our region moved the number of students who were in career academies. I like to call them college and career prep because they are that. And if you do that correctly, they increased those from about 500 spots to today. There's almost 8,000 spots for students who are studying in both career and college. That's a huge move. And that would not have happened if we had not decided collectively that this was in the best interest of our students, our families, our employers, and our future economy. So there are some really big moves that have happened, and we've got a lot further to go.
Yeah, definitely. Chancellor Wilcox.
I won't go into all kinds of detail, but in the last 5 years, we have doubled the number of Latinx transfer students to the University of California Riverside, from 1,200 to 2,400. Now, that's a complex problem, and you can only imagine how many partners it took to make that kind of outcome. So that is one of the, and that's what GIA aspired to all these many years ago. And that, I was sitting here listening and thinking as Sheila was talking. Then you can go all the way to the other end. That's a huge challenge and multi-year and all the rest. But here in the last few months, myself, the president at La Sierra, the president at Cal Baptist, and the chancellor of the Riverside Community College District, the 4 major entities here in the city have been meeting to talk about COVID. Not that we have to worry so much about management, but what we do individually has an impact on what the others do in terms of children and families and all the rest. So coordinating that activity during this pandemic is a complex problem in some ways, but it's more the informal, hey, let's think about this together, because if you're going to do this as a mandate, then it has these implications for all the families, because a lot of these students are in more than one of these institutions. So the history that I've said many times, I was fortunate to come to Riverside when I did. Leaders like Sheila who had laid the groundwork. We've had great people in places of influence in both counties over these last few years that all leaned into this notion of collaboration. My understanding of the long history is the collaborations weren't as strong between counties as they are now. That's just people choosing to do it. And once you choose to do it, then yeah, you can have organizations that I think will be enduring and important, but it's the interpersonal stuff that also makes a difference too.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and thank you for sharing those examples. I think they're great, both, you know, more immediate responses and long-term, you know, success stories on how collective impact work is really making a difference in the region. So thank you. It looks like we are at 11:22, and I want to leave a little bit of time for a couple questions. If you have a question, please feel free to come off mute at this time and ask it to Sheila and Kim.
And please direct them all at Sheila.
I actually had a quick question, if you don't mind. This is CPEL. I currently work. First of all, Sheila, thank you, and Dr. Kim. Really, really great information. I currently work at the University of Laverne as a director of corporate foundation relations, and I actually came across a student. Sheila, this is directed towards you mostly, but I came across a student who had received a scholarship through OneFuture's. And, you know, he completed his degree, and his goal was to go back into the Coachella Valley where he was from and basically work for the city, become a city manager or something, work in public service. And I just thought that was so powerful. And I happened to come across that yesterday, and then you were on this. So serendipity, I think that's what they call it.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. So my question is, you know, I imagine we are already involved, but how can our university or other colleges and universities become a bigger part of what you're doing at OneFuture's?
You can join an alignment team. Contact me directly, Sheila at OneFuture CV. I'm so glad to hear that story. Our one component of our strategy is aligned scholarship giving, and we've done that as a result of a significant investment that the College Futures Foundation made, which was across 10 years. So we did $1 million a year in scholarships, but then we matched it with about 20 nonprofit partners, very specifically to get our whole region thinking about building a college-going culture and thinking about the result of their investment. So what triggered for me is you're in foundation, I think I heard. And, you know, we could talk a whole lot about how would we do different philanthropy differently in an aligned way, and really optimize those dollars. We've got engines in place where I think we can do that. And I think the GIA has some real potential for that. Specifically in our region, just to hear that student wants to do that, our class of 2019-20, all of them, the requirements for our scholarships are below a certain expected family contribution. But of that class, 88% want to return to live and work in the Coachella Valley. Wow. And oftentimes they come out of college with a degree, but they don't have sort of the network or the social capital to do it. So we're now finding that we're needing to do a little bit of that bridge work as well. And sometimes employer systems do not match, they're not very effective at making the connections. So that's sort of the new work that OneFuture is doing, is making the deliberate connection between our alum and the workforce locally. So how do you get involved? We have a college completion team. We have an employer engagement team. We have a whole regional plan collaborative. So there are probably a couple places we could plug you in, but I'd love to talk with you about that. And is it SIPEL? How do you pronounce your name?
It's okay. It's CPEL.
CPEL. Great.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you so much for the question. We have time for probably one more question if anyone has one. Okay, and if not, that's okay. If you do have a question that you wanted to that came to mind, you wanted to email it to me directly, I'll make sure that gets over to Kim and Sheila and back to you. I want to offer my sincere thanks to you, Sheila and Kim, for bringing your unique backgrounds and perspectives to this chat today. I know everyone listening is benefiting from the wisdom and the guidance you shared. Before we close, one last thing I'd like to queue up for everyone in attendance to be thinking about: what project or initiative are you currently working on or involved with at your organization or in partnership with someone else that you wish more people in the region knew about? And how might they get involved? Think about that. It'll be a topic of conversation during our speed networking sessions this afternoon. We're now off to a quick break, and we'll reconvene today at 11:50, where you can pick from one of several outstanding breakout sessions we have planned, and those descriptions and links are available back in the main lobby in Attendify. We'll see you at 11:50. Thank you so much.
Thanks all.